Welcome, everybody. So this is going to be a continuation of what we were going over. You guys hearing that feedback? Feedback. What I'm going to do is mute you guys for a second. once I figure it out. Hold on. Okay. Let's see. All right. Is that better? Is that better? Okay, great. Oops. Let's do this. All right. So welcome everybody. We're going to be doing a continuation of last week's content. Still here, don't want to make you watch me make dinner. Okay, got it. Robin will be making dinner. We're going to be doing a continuation of last week's content, going over the last two money wounds, and then really we're prepping all of this because we're closing up the spiral of the healing spiral, which is really everything we've been doing with the first set of transmissions and the 40-day practice, and really it's prepping us to go into the creation phase, the creation process, which will be more directly related to magic, manifesting techniques, tantric manifestation, magic rituals. Will also be bringing in more concrete business skills and strategies to help you guys. Most of us who are here, I think most of us are business owners or want to be business owners. A lot of you guys are coaches, healers. I don't know. I would love maybe if we could start sharing in the Facebook group what everybody does. I've had individual time with, I think, everybody who's here today, but I know there's other people, a lot of people in Australia and Thailand and the UK, and they're not able to make these live group seminars. So for those of you watching on replay, connect with me. Let me know what you're working on. Let me know what your goals are. Share with us about what it is you do or what you want to be doing. And because this next stage that we're moving into is going to be more concretely based in helping you manifest money in your gifts and learning how to do that, experiencing that experience. And if you already have a business, experiencing greater abundance in your business. So we want to be getting more specific. We want to get more visible. Everybody here, everybody who's here live, everybody who's watching on replay. That's one of your assignments this week, is to share in our Facebook group, like shameless self-promotion. I want to hear who you are, what your greatest gifts are, what your business is, what your dreams are, what you want to create if you're not yet in that line of work yet, what you want to be doing, because that's where we're going moving forward. And this can be a great prep, great exercise in visibility, in owning your value, in sharing who you are, what you do with the rest of us. And also so that I can help you. I want to get to know each and every one of you and be able to support you, with what you need. So if you want to include in those posts, what you really feel you want to experience in this next spiral, which is going to be more the concrete dynamics of manifesting in your gifts, whether those are business skills, whether that's mindset work, whether that's more of the magical side of manifesting. That's where we're going next. So gear up for it. And let me know how I can support you. What do you need help with? What kind of information do you want? What are your greatest challenges? And then we can really begin workshopping in the Facebook group, and we'll have the content coming out to support us. That should be out by this weekend. So we'll have the next schedule. The other thing I want to say, and I'm saying all this at the beginning because I don't know how many people watched to the very end of the seminars through all the comments. The other thing I want to say is I'd really love if you have been unable to attend the group calls because of timing, if and you really want to be able to be on them, we can choose different times in this next schedule to accommodate people that are haven't been. And I know it's been difficult. I think especially for some of the people maybe in Australia and in the UK. So, because like UK right now, it's 11 p.m. So I'm sure a lot of you guys are in bed. So I want to be able to make these video seminars accessible for everybody to join live. And I really do encourage you to come in live if you can, because even if you get the transmission from the replay, your energy matters. Like, not only can you get your own personal attention on your business or on yourself or your money mindset, or whatever, your soul purpose, these types of things, you can get that direct connection with me through these seminars. But also when you share, it's like the likelihood that somebody else in the group is probably experiencing that as well is really high. And so the more we come together as a group, the more powerful it is. So send me emails, or you can post in the Facebook group about what times work for you. Be sure to include your time zones so that I know. And it's just, it's hard. We've got people all over the world. So I'm going to try to choose some alternative times that will hopefully allow people that haven't been able to make these particular calls able to get on those. Hi, Bridge. I see that you just joined. Mwah, mwah. So with housekeeping done, we're going to move into the native money wound today. And we're also going to be talking about the fallen warrior money wound. So if you guys haven't already taken the quiz on my website, you can see it. It's right in the sidebar there to kind of learn which money wound is really alive for you right now. We've also been going through them sort of as a template, like with the healing principles that you learn by healing each money wound, which it's like, visibility, the star archetype heals the witch money wound. The sovereign archetype heals the slave money wound. And what does this mean about us coming into really, really, with the witch money wound, number one, getting really, really coming into the uniqueness of our creation, of what wants to be created through us, coming into the uniqueness of who we are, creating brands, products, and services that embody the sometimes the parts of us that we feel because of the way that our economic system is currently programmed, the parts of us that we feel like, oh, this isn't marketable, or this is a part of myself I don't want to own. And I've really seen from working with clients over 7 years in, this alternative field, that like those like shamed parts, those disassociated parts, those things that we don't want to own about ourselves, when we finally find peace and acceptance and courage to embrace all of who we are and all aspects of our creative power and our creative gifts, like literally I've seen like this is what pops people. This is what makes their messages really magnetic. This is what makes their offerings like second to none. That's the healing wisdom of, the witch money wound, is that star archetype being visible in those parts of what you want to create that you may feel you're uncomfortable, like, or other people will judge, or they won't like, or they won't accept. And like, usually it's the exact opposite. Those are the things that like need to get into our world. Then we move into healing the slave money wound, which is like that feeling that you've got to do something that you hate. You've got to do it all yourself. It's like there's like a good boy, good girl archetype associated with the slave money wound, where you're just kind of like doing remedial like tasks, and you're not allowing yourself really the sovereignty and the power that you need to be a business owner, to be a visionary, to be a leader in your field. And we talked a lot about the really deep levels of the soul healing journey that we all go on in order to successfully birth these lost wisdom traditions and these alternative gifts into this world, that all of this trauma that has gone on over time in our ancestral lineages, in our past lives, collectively on the planet, this has been the force that has just kind of drained all of this value out of our creativity, out of our economic system, and out of our culture. And so there really is a very deep soul healing journey that we go on, and you need a lot of resources. You need a lot of support on both a personal and a professional level. And so what I've really found is that most of us really have to learn how to be super, super abundant and have an abundance mentality, and also have a mentality of sovereignty. We don't have to do it all ourselves. A lot of the king or the queen or the empress or the emperor archetype, which is what the sovereign is really based in, that's knowing how to rule. It's knowing how to delegate. It's knowing how to have the team of support around you that you really need to rule a kingdom, and to also be a noble sovereign. We've got to be doing our inner work. We've got to be doing our inner healing work, so that our needs are met, and we're not unconsciously sort of exploiting whatever other our audiences, our clients, other people, or even like the whole like art, the whole like having a business as a whole to meet those needs. We can be in a place of wholeness. We can be in a place of sovereignty. We can be in a place of complete abundance. And that state is what allows us to really bring in creations like very, very purely. And then finally, we talked about the religious money wound, which is heals through the archetype of the sacred prostitute. And we talked about sanctifying the desire nature, as a as a business owner, and somebody that is, in many cases, like most of us are starting from scratch, and we're starting with opposition. We're starting with the opposition of like our cellular DNA and our lineage and the society that we're sort of piercing through to bring these messages and bring these gifts through. Can in many ways like maybe there's education that needs to happen for people to understand the value of your product or service. Maybe there's maybe there's just like, this is just a very, very new thing, and it's not something that is you might not even think like, oh, this is something that people want. And the thing is like, it takes a tremendous amount of fuel. It takes a tremendous amount of fuel, like just like how a jet engine, like a plane uses, I think, like, I don't know what the exact percentage, but it's like 80% of a plane's fuel tank is used just in takeoff. Okay? 80% of the fuel is used in takeoff. And we have to have a tremendous amount of fuel in order to be able to launch these businesses. If you're somebody that's moving from, being in, a job or being in one kind of business and you want to move into another, there is a huge sort of force that will need to carry you across that divide. And that force is desire. Like you have to want it. You have to really, really, really want it, like in the depths of your soul. And then you've got to learn, even as you grow your business, you have to learn how to let desire be a fuel for manifesting, be a fuel for manifesting money into your business. And this is something that I really love, which is connecting our desires, what are our divinely led desires, to the manifestation of income. Because most of our desires require income, whatever it is, whether it's like you want to go on a trip, you want to take a training, you want new clothing, you want a like a home, whatever it is. And it's learning how to let desire become a fuel for creation and not judging that in yourself. So if you haven't, well, I'm just going to assume everybody who's here has watched that seminar. So that's the recap. And today we're going to move into the native money wound and the fallen warrior money wound. And it's really interesting because both of these have to do with balancing masculine and feminine energy. So we'll start talking a little bit more in tantric terminology here today, and that'll be a great way to segue into the work that we're going to be doing in the next spiral, which will be around tantric manifestation, and I call it the magic spiral. So what I want to say, and I want to be really clear, like tantric terminology will usually split, like talks about creation. So the whole of creation itself is really based in, can't wait for the magic, yes, is really based in two principles. And in like a traditional Indian tantric lineage, they call this Shiva and Shakti. And it's basically the divine masculine and the divine feminine aspects of the creative power or creative consciousness. And what I want to say is, let's understand that all of us have both principles within us. So this is not, it's not based in gender. And if you want to even think about them as, not as like masculine and feminine, you can even think of it as like feminine yin and yang. So basically the yin principles or the feminine principles of creation have to do much more with intuition, empathy, spontaneity, flow, pleasure, sensuality, the created realms, Shakti, which we've already talked a lot about in Sacred Wealth so far. It's like passion, it's desire, and it's creativity itself. And in general, the way that our current economic system is structured, also empathy, compassion, like these types of things, they're all based more in the Shakti principle, because she is the principle of the all. And she is the principle of like the created realms. And and in general, our economic system and the programming that we inherit from the money system is imbalanced, meaning it's more focused in yang than it is in yin. Okay, so let's talk about the yang principles. The yang principles have to do with decision making. It has to do with systems, structures, will, individuality, like conquering, discipline, the idea itself is usually more of the Shiva principle or more of the Yang principle. It's like the leading force, the guiding force, the one mind, the idea that comes forward, and then it's all the boundaries, the systems, the structures, the technology, and the like the empire really that you would build around that, and that force of that determination, that ability to discipline yourself to reach a goal, that ability to set a goal. And these are all more the Yang or the Shiva principles. And so our economic system in general focuses almost exclusively on that at the expense of the yin, okay? at the expense of the yin. So we have like, it's almost as if you've got that yang Shiva masculine principle has been sort of like, um, and in some ways, I might even say exploiting, repressing, denying the feminine. And that's like the dynamic that we've inherited. And so these next two money wounds, depending on whether you are naturally more sort of yang or yin, what you're going to find is you may have more struggles with one or the other. So the native money wound is for a soul that is more naturally identified and possibly on a past life level was identified with the yin principle. And so usually those souls will need to integrate more yang energy in order to be successful in their creative power. If you have more of the fallen warrior money wound, it means you're more naturally identified with the yang principle, and you'll have to bring forward more of the yin, the flowing, emotional, creative, relaxation. A lot of people with the fallen warrior wound are in a state of burnout where they've really disconnected from their feminine essence or from their yin essence. And so I think this will be an interesting seminar here today, because we'll be looking at both of these, and we'll be talking about the balancing points for them and the sacred wealth principles that underlie them, which are basically order out of chaos, which is the native money wound, and the fallen warrior one. Oh my gosh, I might need to bring this up. It's I think it's like victory in defeat. There's victory in defeat. So you'll notice that, and I'm going to get you guys, I'm going to email everybody out this week, like all of the information on all 5 money wounds and all of the sacred wealth principles. So you'll get that in a PDF this week that you can have, you can keep it, you can study it. It could be a guide moving forward. We'll definitely tap into these sacred wealth principles in our next spiral. But the sacred wealth principles, they're basically what they are is they're tantric principles, where what we're trying to do with all of these is we're trying to bring the two principles into balance, into union. And really that's what Tantra is about. That's what, if you're looking at Tantra on like just like a sexual level, obviously you're looking at bringing the two polarities together in terms of love making. If you're looking at it more on what I call more the level of magic and manifestation, which in our modern day culture is all guided through business and money in a capitalist culture, then you're looking at how to bring these two principles into balance energetically through the way we do business, through our mindsets, through how we hold ourselves as business owners, and through our relationship to the world, to ourselves, and to our creative power, so that we can be really, really deeply creating effectively, manifesting effectively, and that manifestation of what we're creating is, like in Tantra, like we want to bring the higher self into the human. We want to bring like our divine ideals, like our divine purpose, like into this world. And so this is the whole structure that really everything will be based on. When I teach business specifically, just to let you guys know, and this is also, I guess I'm doing a lot of prep for where we're moving into the next spiral on this call, because we only have 2 money wounds to go over today. So when I teach business, I teach it actually through what I call our sacred power anatomy. So this is the sexual anatomy. And we look at the different stages of actually, creating life, like, because that's what the sexual anatomy is designed to do. It's designed to manifest like a child, like another human life into the world. But we can also manifest almost anything, creative ideas, projects, businesses, all of these things. We're using the same principles in the anatomy. So we'll actually be teaching like business skills, like through literally the consciousness of the lingam and the yoni and the womb. Okay, so it's really exciting. If you guys haven't ever been exposed to this before, I'm definitely the only person on the planet right now that teaches business in this way. It's going to be really, really fun. And we're going to be learning about Tantra, and we're going to be learning about magic and manifesting. And that's where we're moving into in the next spiral. So get excited about that. And I'm going to just open us with a prayer, and then we can dive in to the content for today. And of course, at the end, I'll open up the lines, and we can do some live coaching, sharing, connecting with one another, and any questions you guys have. You are able to unmute yourself. So when that time comes, I'll just ask for questions, and you guys can share, and we'll move forward from there. So I'm so happy to have you guys with us, and let's tune in to begin. So what I'm feeling guided to do is to just do a little clearing for us all as a group first. So if everybody just takes a moment to close your eyes and take some long, slow, deep breaths in through your nose and out through your mouth. In through your nose and out through your mouth. So allowing yourself to sink into your body. And so we're asking and calling upon Archangel Michael here today to open up a tunnel of light. And if everybody who's here, who's listening to this on replay, just imagine a brilliant tunnel of light opening right above your head and your whole body being placed in this tunnel. And we call upon Archangel Michael and the legions of Michael to clear and remove from us all negative thought forms, energies, entities, attachments, all satanics, demonics, dark forces, all trauma, all karmic monads, all attached souls, any thought forms we may have picked up from this day, from other people in our homes or offices or in our day-to-day activities. We ask that you suck these up out of our field like a vacuum. Any negative electromagnetic frequencies, discordant thought forms, fungus, worry, bacteria, astral distortion, astral leeches. If you're just breathing deeply, just allowing this clearing to take place. And I'll also just invoke Michael with his flaming golden sword to run that sword all around your field, back and the front, and cut any toxic cordings. So this might be cordings to other people in your life, to anybody that you were connected to today, or that you're connected to interdimensionally, that's draining your energy. You can breathe out forcefully, just see those cords being cut, feel them releasing. And we're going to invoke the violet flame. So imagine like a brilliant violet flame is now descending into your field, and it's going into all of those places within you, and it's healing, it's transforming. We ask that this violet flame be with us for the duration of this call here today, and that Archangel Michael stay with us for the duration of the call. And we also are going to invoke Archangel Raphael for healing. We're going to invoke Archangel Uriel for wisdom and guidance. And we're going to also invoke Archangel Gabriel for the awakening and the delivery of any messages that need to come through me or through anyone in the group, to anyone in the group here today. And we ask that you support us on a multidimensional level in healing any past, present, future, ancestral, or collective traumatic imprints or trauma itself, especially that related to war or related to the loss of the indigenous way of life in our own lineages, for the planet as a whole. And we ask that you support all of us on a soul level in deeply healing these wounds and healing them, especially in relationship to our current capitalist system, to the current world order. Healing them in relationship to our own past life experiences, where we were on either side of creating these woundings in humanity, or where our ancestors were. We open ourselves to be healed here today. We open ourselves to receive wisdom so that we may learn how to co-create with one another in a balanced and a harmonious and a sacredly loving way. We are asking for that wisdom to come in and to guide us, especially through our relationship to money and business. We are asking for forgiveness. We're asking for the grace to forgive anyone who ever hurt us through war or conquest or usurping of land. We're asking to be forgiven by all those we may have hurt through war or conquest or the usurping of land or property. We are asking the earth to forgive us, all of the elemental realms to forgive us, and to forgive humanity as a whole. We are asking for the grace to come to all those that we may have hurt, or our ancestors may have hurt, our family members may have hurt, that they forgive and release us. We just want to pull from our sacral, from our lower chakras. If you're feeling any density, any energy down there, just want to imagine just kind of pulling that out and offering it into this beautiful orb of golden light that is here with all of us. And you can send all of that into the light to be healed and to be cleansed. And as you feel that healing and as you feel that cleansing, and you can feel we're going to send all of the wounds of humanity, of war, and the loss of the indigenous way of life, and the pain that the dominator cultures and that we are carrying on so many levels. We're going to send all of that into this golden sphere of light. And we ask that all of this healing is done with the assistance of the archangels, by the principle of divine grace, that we will not take on any of each other's karma or the karma of others. We're simply, deeply asking for healing and deeply asking for the awakening of sacred creativity, sacred economics, sacred wealth. And we offer ourselves as vessels to bring this new paradigm of sacred wealth into the world, to bring a new paradigm of order out of chaos and the victory that is inherent in the defeatedness that so many of us are experiencing of this current way of life and this current paradigm. And so we pray and we ask for that miraculous healing. And we pray and we ask for the gift and the wisdom of Shiva and Shakti to enter into us, the holy yin principle, the holy yang principle. And I want everybody to just kind of witness this double serpent spiral kind of coming up from the base of your spine if you've not already felt it. These two serpents dancing up the spine all the way up to the crown of the head. And it's said that these two principles, the masculine and the feminine, they're like two serpents, and they sit. I have a phone call coming in. They sit at the base of the spine, and they're like a double helix, like our DNA. They dance upwards. And so feel that power and that weaving, that tantra of these two principles in harmony, dancing up, meeting at the crown of your head. And imagine an opening of this beautiful, beautiful crown, lotus flower, self-realized flower of existence. This is your own divinity, your own godhood awakening within you. And from that seventh chakra at the top of the head, this is where the infinite power is stored, the power to create anything. And what I have really witnessed with sacred wealth consciousness is that the more we return into the pure essence of this dance of creation, the more we heal ourselves and heal our lineages, the more we come into a really deeply surrendered and sacred place of service in our gifts. We're actually able to create from this plane of consciousness much more effectively than even the lower planes. Not saying you don't need the lower chakras in line. You do need like business systems and structures. You do need all this, but there's a way to like actually work through the power of your own godhood to just draw and put out whatever is needed into the creation. And so it's your own self that is the temple. It's your own soul that is divine and that has all creative power within it. And sometimes the soul and God or goddess, they're the same. And the more we can like really, really allow that to be what we are, the more effectiveness I've seen, especially for those of us who are more spiritually sensitive, will have in really drawing to us whatever it is that we need and really being able to create from an effortless place. So I pray and I ask that that effortless grace be bestowed upon all of us, that that healing be bestowed upon all of us here today. I ask that I am guided as a channel to deliver whatever messages need to come through to this group. We ask that you open all of us to hear whatever it is that we need to hear, to speak what we need to speak, and to release what we need to release so we can be clear, creative channels and channels of sacred wealth and abundance. And so it is. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Amen. Okay, so I'm just like a little blissed out. You get back into my body here. Yeah, I spend a lot of time, guys, just so you know, I spend a lot of time in those types of states. And I really recommend those of my clients that do private like sacred wealth coaching work with me. I give them this is a little experiment of mine. I've basically, what I learned in my journey, and this is how the mind tells us that we need to be like working all the time, basically. And I'll just say that our culture pretty much conditions us this way. And the reality is that there are three components to our consciousness. We are body, which is like the world of nature, the world of the animalistic consciousness that is the body. And this is desire, pleasure. I've seen, tribe, family, friends, art, culture, all of this actually is part, eating, the health of your body, your physical vibration. This is all the body consciousness. We are mind, and the mind is I call it the world of mankind. And it has to do with everything that is, what we consider, creation in the world of man. It's your cell phone, and it's bills, and it's your business, and it's getting your passport when you need the passport. It's all of how you relate to the society of others in a worldly context, the world of man, which is really where sacred wealth, economic consciousness is based. And then you have the world of spirit. We're spirit, and that's the world of spirit. And this is the inner life, really. It's the this is meditation. This is long walks, spending time within with yourself, journaling, connecting to the divine in whatever capacity that is for you. And I have seen that, like, in order to be really healthy and balanced, we really need to spend about an equal amount of time in each of these three worlds: the world of man, the world of nature, and the world of spirit, body, mind, and spirit. And our culture pretty much wants us to really be focused, like most of our energy, in the mind, in the world of man. And then it gives us like this little chunk in the world of nature. And that's like, and you get a 30-minute lunch break, and then you rush home and you get to spend some time with your family, and maybe you take like a cardio class and then you go to bed. So we get like a little chunk of like nurturing, like body pleasure, desire, the animalistic self, and like nothing in the world of spirit. I mean, maybe like Sundays you get like an hour of church. And that's it. Or maybe like a little prayer before you eat, a little prayer before bed. And it's really, really imbalanced. It's like really imbalanced. And the yogis say that we only would really need 6 hours of sleep a night. And the reason we need 8 is because of that massive imbalance. It like really drains us. It drains us because we overwork ourselves, and we have like very little time for like nurturing the animalistic self. Like in our culture, we're all disconnected from pleasure and desire and emotions and each other, and like we mistreat our bodies. And so I think we're living with an imbalance, like that we think we need to sleep 8. And what I have found when I do like attunement, and I know this is off topic, I guess it just wants to come in, is like when you spend like rich amounts of time in the world of spirit, and you spend like rich amounts of time in like pleasure and the body, and like really, really nurturing like your desires and art and connection and family and like all of that. And then you spend like literally like 6 hours a day working and taking care of your business. It's like 666. And this is so funny because that's like the devil number, right? It's like the devil. But we went through the Dark Lord's transmission, and like Lucifer is actually like a form of Venus, right? It's like knowing how to have like a beautiful life. And what I really found is like, it's not like you're always going to be perfect, but I just found that I need like a lot of time in these other dimensions of consciousness. And it's always been a challenge for me because I was very between these two wounds that we're about to go into. I was way more fallen warrior than I was native. So by nature, I was an overachiever. I was a go, go, go type of person. I was a workaholic 100%. And I was that way from the time I was a little girl. Okay, so I had way more of that conqueror warrior energy in me. It's also like in my lineage too. So basically, I'm like Irish, but I don't know. There's a lot of other stuff over there. There's a lot of other things on that side of the family, and like Italian, like Roman, like, I mean, all of this stuff. So I had a lot of that energy. So we're going to be talking about balance here today. I mean, really, when we're talking about the native money wound, we're talking about the fallen warrior money wound. Like what we're really going into is how do we find balance? How do we find balance in our lives as creators, partaking in a society that our conditioning is probably warped? Okay, and basically the conditioning is like I mean, literally when I worked at Amazon, like people weren't just working 8-hour days, they were working 10, 11, 12-hour days. It was like it was kind of like nobody said we had to do that, but everybody was doing that. They paid us overtime, and so everybody was doing it, and then you just felt like you had to do it because everybody else was doing it. And I think our culture really suffers. A lot of people really suffer, the lack of pleasure, the stale air, the not taking enough time to nurture our bodies, not taking enough time to nurture the spirit and the soul. And it doesn't actually make us more productive. And this is what I have really found and what I've really discovered. It's almost as if there's an illusion that we create more, but like when you look at the creations that come from that place, they are often very, very warped. They are often actually not what we really want to be doing. They burn us out over time. I have, a lot, like I sort of have two people that come to my practice. One are going to be more of like the natural native, like those with like the more free spirited, creative, feeling, intuitive nature connection, like where you don't prioritize work as your main thing in life. You prioritize friendships, you prioritize family, you prioritize your relationship with the earth. But the thing that I've seen with that group is like the wound is still there, is when you try to get those people to do anything related to the world of mankind and like getting specific and structured and disciplining yourself for anything, it's like because the wound is there, they're just like, like evil, wrong, I can't do it, I can't do it, I can't do it. And then there's the ones that are more like the warriors, the conquerors, the ones that are like more like, "Vroom," like we're really good at all that stuff. And you try to get those people and tell them to take 3 hours for themselves in the morning, and they're like, oh, like they like can't do it. They're like, this is so wrong, it's so unnatural. And so it's kind of interesting because I see these two, kind of like these two money wounds as being like almost like they're part of the same wound, which is like this imbalance. And when you look at, what has happened on the planet with dominator cultures that were then coming in, and what happened is you had a culture that has more of this will to power, will to advance technology. And there are a lot of gifts. There are a lot of gifts that came from the, the what's more of like the Roman, British, now American, like white man kind of conquering culture. There are like technologies, unification of the world, like these types of things. There are benefits that came in, but they've come in with like a massive deficit, like a massive expense that is just really wiped out so much wealth of consciousness in our civilization. It's because of the whole, the horrible trauma that took place. In what would happen is they'd come into like, and this even happened, if you're of Western European descent, like, I have Irish roots. So, the Celtics and the Druids were deeply, deeply indigenous people. They didn't even write. It was like against sacred law to write things down. Like, because like the divine was so sacred, it needed to just flow in spontaneously, like through the being of the body and the unique voice and like the oral tradition. They were like a deeply, deeply indigenous people. Okay. They were deeply connected to the divine feminine. And so, even if you have Western European roots, you could have an indigenous money wound. You could still have an indigenous money wound. And basically what would happen is, like, first it's like you can't have your cultural traditions, you can't have your connection to land, you can't have your connection to body. This is all the Judeo-Christian programming, sexuality, all of this. And then the second thing was throwing out the sacred, throwing out the soul and the spirit. And this was how that conquest was won. So when we go into this discussion here today, we're going to be looking at these two archetypes in ourselves and how you bring them back into balance. So we're going to start with the native or the indigenous money wound. And I want to just talk about the money wound first, and we'll talk about the healing process, because basically the native or the indigenous money wound is if you, on a past life level, on an ancestral level, or on just like, usually if you have a predisposition towards being more of this archetype. And so this is how it looks. It looks like you are more of a natural free spirit. You are more of a you don't value career. That's not number one in your life. Number one in your life is tribe. Number one is your friendships. Number one is your family. You are pleasure driven, pleasure oriented. You're deeply connected to nature. You have really, really strong values in that regard. You are usually, these types are more artistic. They like to be more in flow all the time. like Asheville, where I live now, we have like this was, once a like a sacred land to the Cherokee, which is an indigenous Native American indigenous group of people, and so it draws a lot of souls here that have more of this predisposition. You come to Asheville, it's just like work is not prioritized here, like it's like playing outside in nature, like you want to make everything but yourself, whether it's your clothes or like the beer you're bringing to a party, or like everything is handmade, the homes are handmade, it's very tribal, it's very communal, there's like beautiful art, the art is just amazing, there's like from music to painters to all like artisans, like the whole town was like built on artisans and craftsmanship. And so this is more um this is the beauty of that indigenous spirit, and it's more of the divine feminine. If you're looking at Shiva Shakti, this is those souls that are more identified with the Shakti principle and the principle of creativity and empathy and community and connection and living in the moment and relying on nature to support you. And there's so much power, and there's so much beauty in that. The thing is that because these people, and on a collective level, the severe abuse that was inflicted on this group, these indigenous groups of people all around the world, the abuse that was inflicted on them, the forcing and the conquering by, the more, what we would say, more like the Shiva consciousness, or the masculine consciousness oriented groups on the planet. What happened is that they have in many ways lost the sacred masculine power, right? Because now, because of the wounding that has happened, and if we're talking about this specifically in relationship to money and business, it's like the whole capitalist system is really seen as being like very dark, very evil, very wrong. And oftentimes there is a disassociation from the Shiva principles. There's a disassociation from the good aspects of the Yang principle. And that disassociation leaves those with these gifts very disempowered, because you need both. You need both the Shiva and the Shakti. You need both the yin and the yang. You need both the feminine and the masculine to create effectively. And so if you have more of a native or an indigenous soul, and you have this particular money wound, how that shows up is it usually shows up as very strong resistance to anything having to do with money, business. Many times, these people that are more the native or indigenous soul, they have really virulent belief, really strong belief systems. Moral integrity is very important about like how you spend money, what products and services you buy, how you make money. And a lot of times it's so strong, and when the wound is unhealed, the resistance towards the machine, or towards the system of whatever it is, whatever the thing is like they live in a state of disassociation from the rest of the culture. And so this can look like, just like your average hippie, where the rest of the culture just says like you're a waste of space, you're not doing anything productive, et cetera. And the person's like very ungrounded. So these are some of the things I've seen. Like these types of souls, they're usually like very transitory. They don't stay in one place long. They're like always go with the flow. If I'm coaching with one to try to help them like build any form of structure around their art or their gifts, it's like a really strong resistance to it. And it's almost like, I can't do it. And it's because like deeply in the cellular DNA and deeply in the body, mind, spirit complex, or in the lineage, the wound is still being held. The wound of abuse is still being held there. And so, we talked about the whole process of trauma healing on the call that we had last weekend. So I won't go into that. You guys know there's a deeper soul healing journey to go on in order to really activate your creative power again. But one of the things that I have seen is there is a need to, like, ultimately, like, after you go through the whole trauma healing process, like, what is the archetype or what is the energy that is really going to support somebody that is more this free spirited, communal, nature oriented, artistic person in being able to effectively bring their gifts into the world? They actually need to own the conqueror archetype. And here's the thing, it's not conquering other people. That's where it went wrong. It's not conquering, it's not conquering, it's not conquering another. It's actually conquering one's own self, one's own, like, the wild nature within oneself, and bringing order out of the chaos, again, out of the chaos that a lot of people with this money wound experience, because they do experience a lot of chaos and, like, a lack of ability to ground. And this is, you could just look at what happened to indigenous cultures, and they were like moved, they were like literally moved all the time, until finally we have, indigenous peoples separated from society on reservations. And so if this money wound is going on in you, there's a tendency to actually literally outpicture it as, like, not being able to stay in one place, not being able to ground, and eventually living in a very disassociated state from the world. And many times there's, like, if grounding does occur, it's going to be in, like, a community or commune, which is also really great. And I think there's wonderful things that can come from that. But here's what I want to say. When like people with the native indigenous spirit are actually, like, they're like some of the most important people to practice sacred wealth, because if you are someone that has this, when these people do heal their relationship to the sacred masculine, and when these groups, when you're when the indigenous soul within you does heal that relationship to the sacred masculine, these people become the most conscious business owners I have ever seen. Like, they bring in, of all the different groups, they bring in the most beautiful businesses. Their businesses and the way that they work with money and with producing goods and producing services is, like, so incredibly sacred. They have such deep values that naturally drive them, and they set examples. They set examples for the rest of the world to follow. And it is like, I would say that, like, my whole process of bringing sacred wealth forward, like bringing, because let me just say, like, I did not want to do sacred wealth. Like, I just wanted to do Magdalene and, like, sacred sexuality. And, like, I didn't want to, like, because I guess I have aspects of both wounds. I had a huge need of a money wound. It's why I had to, like, move to Asheville in order to birth Sacred Wealth, because it was just like, who wants to try to work with money in a conscious way? Like, there was a lot of resistance in my body and being towards, like, the capitalist system. And so, like, the Sacred Wealth whole framework is like a manifestation of basically like a healing modality that is coming from what it looks like when the indigenous aspect of us heals the masculine, realizes the sacred masculine principle, and then comes forward and brings in, like, these beautiful integrations with, like, the economic system. So a great example of this is the CEO of Patagonia. So his name is Yvon Chouinard, and he was a total free spirit hippie climber, loved nature, loved just being outdoors, just climbing, et cetera, et cetera. And then, decided at one point there was no real climbing gear. Climbing was a pretty new kind of sport in the 60s or 70s whenever Yvon Chouinard was creating Patagonia. And so, began producing climbing gear. I mean, this guy lived with like he used to bring cans of cat food with him out into the wilderness and live off cat food. Like he has like no interest in the material plane at all. He just like loves nature, loves being in the body, like loves being free, loves doing what he loves. So if any of you are interested, you have more of the native money wound, I really recommend getting his book. It's called Let My People Go Surfing. And it's like the journey of a reluctant businessman. It's all about how in the creation of Patagonia, he's talking about how business is like one of the most evil forces on the planet, and how his whole journey of how to create a very conscious business. And Patagonia is for if you're looking at like a corporation, it has some of the best, environmental practices, the lowest environmental footprint. Their marketing practices are extremely innovative. I think like last year they put out an ad that was just like one of their coats, and it just said, "Don't buy this coat." And then like the whole ad was just like, "You don't need more stuff, like recycle what you have." Like that was it. It was just like, "Don't buy this coat." And then it just talked about like the massive consumption habits and how you don't need more stuff. And their sales were like really great that year that they put that ad out. So they make a lot of powerful statements. They were also one of the first corporations, if you can imagine this, there was like no maternity leave. There was no maternity leave. And so Yvon Chouinard was one of the first companies to integrate maternity leave, child care centers like on the campus, like where Patagonia was. And at that time in America, maternity leave didn't even exist. So if you can think about like the revolutions that can come into our economic system when those that have more of this free-spirited, nature-oriented, communal, family-oriented like nature, when they do integrate in, like they do overcome and they do like choose to create like in the culture, they bring in like the most beautiful innovations. And I think like that's why I'm like super passionate, even though they're like some of the hardest to work with. If you're gonna do business coaching, it's like the hardest. But like if this is you, like just like dig in to do the really deep soul healing work and know that like your practice is going to be realizing the sacred masculine. Your practice is going to be about integrating the conqueror energy, and the healing principle for the native money wound is order out of chaos. So it's being able to bring order out of chaos and learning how to, like, chaos is like the wild, like the creative, like the wild nature of reality, right? It's like the wild, like mother nature. And it's like there is a way to bring sacred order to nature, like gardening, like there's a way to tend. And so these souls, when they get into business, that's what they do. It's like they build these gardens of consciousness like through their business, and they're so super conscious, and they tend to like every little part of it, and they bring in like some of the most beautiful innovations because of it. But you've got to integrate that conqueror energy, and that means learning how to if you have an idea, like learning how to set a goal. Like maybe it's about focusing on one idea, bringing that forward, right? Like using more of these Shakti principles. You certainly, if you have the native money wound, have to do a lot of reprogramming work around your relationship to money and business itself. So everything we're doing with the 40-day practice, and I would say be doing ongoing affirmations. I mean, really all of us need to be doing that. But I think especially especially those that have this particular soul wounding. And here's the thing, like all of us, even if you're not more naturally that type, all of us will have a part of us. We all have an indigenous spirit in us. So, you can really look at like where that is in your lineage, and do this healing work with the sacred masculine. Like if you ever see yourself having just tremendous resistance to something that's more like putting a schedule in place, or systems and structures, or focusing on one idea, these types of things, you can kind of use it as like a touchstone to be like, well, I'm probably struggling. Like there's an aspect of my wild, free spirited, creative Shakti nature that is perceiving this as being something that's going to limit me or imprison me, or steal from me, steal my life force from me. And it means that there's an aspect of the shadow masculine, or the wound matrix of the masculine power, that sort of dark lord energy, that needs to be healed or needs to be repatterned in your consciousness. So how can you think about scheduling rather than thinking about it as a limitation? How could you do scheduling in your life and in your business so that it actually supported you better? And this was like the whole thing in the beginning of the call, where I talked about how I learned, whoa, I need like 6 hours, 6 hours, 6 hours. Like that was actually helpful. That was actually like helpful when I got that. And then I know I can chunk my time. Like if this is the 6 hours that I'm going to be in the world of man, and I make sure I have 3 hours here for meditation in the morning, and then I have workout or yoga time or dance time in the afternoon, or I have make sure that I schedule dates with my friends so that I'm keeping myself like filled with tribe and community. And that at one point, like scheduling was it's still one of my weaker spots, but at one point it was like way worse. And so that was like the aspect of my indigenous nature that was holding that wound in place. So that's just like one aspect of how me dealing with that struggle in myself led me to an awakening of like much deeper wisdom, and like an integration of like a really profound, like what I feel is a really profound innovation of like how to schedule your life, And so that's what I'm saying, like your indigenous soul, or the indigenous aspect of who you are, like has like tremendous wisdom, and is like such a key to really awakening sacred wealth consciousness within you. So instead of just like staying in the struggle, really do the inquiry work, really do the soul healing work, and like bring forward like what the integration looks like. And it's going to be innovative. It will be innovative. It won't look like what the culture wants it to be. It'll be that balanced. I'm just going to, China's saying I sound far away. Raise your hand if you're also hearing that. Audio is fine for Anastasia. My volume is up. Okay, so it might be everyone else is saying it's fine. So China, maybe it's your speakers. I think it was me. Okay. Yeah, Monica's saying like you're in my DNA and guts it, but I'm like half one and half the other in combat with each other. Yeah, exactly. That's why we're doing these two together, because they do work together. Like we'll do some like tantric, we're going to learn some like tantric manifestations, because a lot of this is about, again, balancing masculine and feminine energy. Germanic Jewish warrior and Cherokee warrior. Yeah. You can have the battle like literally, it's like literally going on within yourself. Like I've literally seen past lives, literally seen myself like on the road, like as a as a Celt, like like stabbing like I was part of the resistance, like my like stabbing Roman soldiers. And like my the Gilligans were, they had to leave Ireland because they were part of the resistance. They were like IRA. So I have both, like the Celtic side of me is like very indigenous, but then I have the Roman side of me, which is like the exact opposite. So yeah, many of us can have this like going on like in our own like bloodline, like in our own self. um you had a past life dream that you were a gay Italian architect who gave the church away to Catholics and got killed by a Medici. Wow. Well, which architect? You were a Filippo Brunelleschi. That's the architect. Amazing. Damn. Well, that's badass. Yes, yes. Wow. You had the dream while you were in surgery? Okay, let's talk about that in the Q&As. That's fascinating. I'm sure that's true. So now I need to go look at Brunelleschi. I can't remember what did he design in Italy? I thought so, the Duomo. You know what? You know what's so funny, Monica, is like I dated an Italian for many years. And when we first went to Italy together, I had all these photos and I did this little slideshow and I put these little quotes to it. And I made some random joke about how like I think I made a random joke about how I designed the Duomo in a former life. It must have been I knew I was gonna meet you. I did. I totally made a joke about that. Wow. Wow. Okay. Well, this is huge. So we can talk about like specific past lives. If you have specific ones, you might have karma from that that you can apply today. So, all right. Does anyone want to ask, like, before I move on, do you want to ask questions about this money wound, the healing principle, order out of chaos healing practices? Does anyone want to? If you do, just like unmute your line. Okay. So I'm not getting anything. So I'm going to move on. Okay, so now we're going to talk about the fallen warrior wound. And a lot of us will identify with this one. Basically, what the fallen warrior money wound looks like is it's like you've been in that conqueror mode your whole life. Or I don't know, maybe it's just been like a phase. It doesn't have to be your whole life. Let's talk about like somebody who is naturally this. You're naturally more type A. You're naturally more driven. You're naturally more, I don't know if it's left brain or right brain, left brain. You're naturally more goal oriented. You're naturally more about accomplishment. You're naturally more driven towards success. You are naturally more self-disciplined. You're naturally more a workaholic. You've really, you've been a part of the force, right? You've been one of the warriors, like going and going and going and working for the empire, right? And it's just like it's been happening for you. This is the way that maybe your family was programmed more naturally. And you have like where your disconnect is like you might find that the sacrifice of pleasure, the sacrifice of family, the sacrifice of friendships, the sacrifice of nature, the sacrifice of your body and your health, you are sacrificing the left side, right? You're sacrificing what the more of the indigenous soul holds really sacred. You've been sacrificing that. And in a lot of ways it's because you've been born into a dominator culture. You're like, your family taught you this. You learned to associate success like with that path of accomplishment, fulfillment with that path of accomplishment, and at the expense of that more feminine Shakti side of yourself. So if that is you, what this money wound, what it looks like, is these people usually are successful. They're usually not like in serious financial struggles, because they are, they take care. They're working, they're more the workaholic. Now, I have seen people with this that they're working all the time, but they're not making good money, or they're working all the time and it's not doing what they want. And they're sacrificing a lot of the pleasure. They're sacrificing a lot of the connection that they really need, the connection to body, to earth, to other people, to each other. And there is the typical kind of money wound that shows up is burnout. Is like, it's like you've got everything, you've got the success, you've got this, you've got that, but you're not fulfilled. And a lot of times I see the body burns out. And I see this a lot with, when I have women that come to me from corporate America, women that come that are, lawyers and CEOs, and are, they've been soldiering. And I say women, only reason I say that is because I've worked mostly with women. I'd really love to open this up, and I'm trying to do that, maybe not very well, but I'm saying women because that's just like typically who my clientele has been. It could be men too, and now I'm seeing it in men too. So it's just like the soldiering on, the pushing yourself through, and what I found with these people is actually it's really hard for them to stop the train. It's like an addiction. It's like an addiction. It's really hard for them to stop. You tell them to like nurture their body, or take time out to meditate, or like reduce their hours and go do something fun. Sometimes it's like, I don't even know what to do. Like, I don't even know what's fun. It's like, I don't even know what gives me pleasure. I don't even know. And basically what's happened is you're like way too far in that yang energy, and the yin is like very deeply out of balance, and it results in burnout. And a lot of times there is a lack of alignment in the work that is being done, meaning like maybe it's a job you're working that isn't what you really want to do, or it's like the brand, if you are a business owner, the brand is misaligned, like because what happens is usually there is a soul healing journey the soul needs to make, to bring that to bring the real meaning, to bring the real pleasure, to bring the real juice back into their life as a whole. And this a lot of times changes the purpose that they want to work for in the world. And so those with the fallen warrior money wound, and I call it the fallen warrior. You could also think of it as just the warrior money wound. I call it the fallen warrior because usually if these people are coming into sacred wealth, like they're in the burnout stage, and it's just like, I'm done. Like it's too much. It's too much. I can't carry on. And so there is a need. The healing archetype that I have for this one is the goddess Nike, and she's the goddess of victory. And she's a goddess. That's the first thing. It's like these souls really need to return to the divine feminine, and they need to begin to nurture the divine feminine principle in their life. And so that principle is everything related to feelings and the body and pleasure and community and fun and connection and all of these things. And that is really where the soul is hungry. The soul is hungry for that. And so there is a need to kind of dive into that feminine energy again. And then also, just like with all the other ones, the soul healing process, the trauma healing process, it's really relevant for everybody, no matter what money wound you have. There's a soul healing process that you have to go through, because a lot of times there is deep trauma that is associated with why you're not embracing that sacred feminine. And it's a little bit I don't know, in some ways I don't know which way is harder, but like when you're dealing with the warrior one money wound, like what I have found is it's a very humbling process of like healing. Like there is a it's almost like recognizing that you've been acting like an abuser towards yourself. It's recognizing that you've been abusing your own inner feminine. It's recognizing potentially the ways your ancestors did that, the ways that you did that to your own body, the way you did that to your that part of your soul that wanted more time with your family or wanted more time with friendships. And so, if you're in this money wound, it's really like more the wound of the dominator. It's the wound of the abuser that you're going to be coming to terms with, and needing to see it in yourself, and needing to kind of like go through a forgiveness process, with yourself, and an amends making process with your own sort of more divine feminine side, and learning how to honor that side of yourself, and taking responsibility for changing the way that your achievement oriented side relates to your more feeling, body, tribe, pleasure oriented side. And so there is I think like there is a lot I think a lot of sort of I think a lot I even heard like like England isn't teaching history anymore in their school system. So I think it's something that's going to be happening like more and more for the dominator cultures. Like, first of all, I don't think like that's necessarily a good thing that they're not teaching history. I just want to say like it's because they are processing on a collective level now the shame and the guilt over kind of the British Empire and like what it did to the world. And so there is a process of almost like dealing with maybe residual layers of shame and guilt that you have over how you might have been dominating the indigenous part of your own soul, like within yourself. And for peacemaking from the way your ancestors did this or the way your culture did this, and releasing the belief systems and reshaping yourself. And a lot of times I've seen people that are more this way, it's almost like sometimes they need to take a hiatus, sometimes they need to take a sabbatical, sometimes there needs to be like a deep entry into the sacred feminine in some way, whether that is like deeply diving into the path of pleasure and the sacred sexual priestess and the divine feminine, or whether it's like moving out into the country and going into nature again, whether it is, leaving a job that you're in. I've seen that there is like I call it like this death and resurrection process that really happens in the healing of this wound in order to retrieve the other part of the soul and bring it into balance. Once that is done, and so we talk about the fallen warrior because it's like when a warrior fails, like when a warrior fails in really protecting the tribe or protecting the sacred feminine, basically, like if you look at the warrior archetype, the warrior has to kind of condition, it's a sacred masculine archetype, number one. and it's sacred. It's sacred. Like the masculine energy is like half killer, half lover. And this is just like as a whole. Like if we're just doing basic tantric practices and we're working with the masculine energy, part of its nature is to be a killer. And this is because you have to kill to protect the tribe, you have to kill to hunt. And but it has to be held within love. It has to be held. The only way that archetype of the warrior finds its purpose is when it's in service to the mother, when it's in service to the divine mother, when it's in service to the family, when it's in service to the woman, when it's in service to the tribe or the community, when it's protecting and when it's supporting what's really meaningful and what's really sacred. That warrior energy is so super powerful. It is so sacred. It is so needed. It is 100% needed. And basically when you're in the fallen warrior state, it's almost as if like the warrior energy has been being used, and this is like that dark masculine, that horrible kind of like Bones Gate energy of like disassociation from the feminine, numbing out to the body, abusing, like teaching violence as a form of power. It's like there was this deep schism that happened. Like, I don't even know how far back it happened, maybe back in ancient Egypt or something in Western culture, where like that warrior or that masculine energy was usurped. It was disassociated from the feminine essence of the culture, and then it was used. And I've seen this on an interdimensional level. There are serious demons that are governing this and just harvesting it through humanity, like serious Watikos is what they call it in the indigenous traditions. In the Gnostic Christian, they're called archons. They're not basic demons. They're like massive entities that have just come in and like are just like feeding off of it. And basically, you know, this was something that Brooks taught me, the way that these entities, if evil wants to take over a planet, the only thing they have to do is disassociate everyone from the feminine. That's all they have to do. You disassociate from the goddess, you disassociate people from the earth, you disassociate them from the divine feminine, and these things come in and they just feed. And like, so, and like everybody is like, very I mean, not everybody sees on that level, so we just experience it as like these horrible traumas going on over and over again in our history, but like that's what's going on interdimensionally. And so essentially, like when a warrior and when a warrior is like cut off from like the feminine principle in oneself, and then on a societal level the society is cut off from the feminine principle, the warrior loses all purpose. Like there's no real sacredness left in being a warrior. And so people that have this nature, like you have a strong yang, like I am like a warrior by nature. Like it's not just because of my lineage, it's also like I'm like a Dakini, like I'm like a Kali energy, you know, and that's a yang feminine energy. And so what has to happen is that there is the reclamation of the true feminine, and whatever that is, that's your pleasure, your real purpose, that's family, that's what's going to really light you up. Once you find that again, then you take this like super powerful like yang energy that you have and you just use it to protect and support and empower this. And that's really what brings both of them into balance. Those that have that feminine energy more naturally, they just need to bring their powerful warrior conqueror in to like protect and support this. Those that are more on this side usually have to like go find and resurrect and heal the feminine. And then you've got probably so many like natural gifts, skills, business skills that once you do, you're going to really find like so much more success, and success that is like way more fulfilling, way more fulfilling. So on the healing principle is victory out of defeat, and or victory in defeat. And it's something that I think everybody in general in like more of a Western culture is learning right now. And it's like, what I mean by that is by giving up, basically giving up, like surrender, like, and that's really hard for the warrior to do. The warrior is not conditioned to surrender, but you've got to surrender, the sort of like, you've got to stop the train, right? You've got to stop the train, you've got to surrender, and then kind of like allow that defeatedness, allow that burnout, allow that allow it to take you down. Find and go into your sacred feminine from there. Go on your healing journey from there. Find Nike, find the goddess of victory, like, and she's gonna bring you the real victory that you need. Like, find the feminine again, and then the warrior will rise back up, and it'll be supporting the right thing. And I went through this, I'll tell you guys, I went through that whole process, like in my business, when I transitioned from doing web design into doing like the Magdalene work, which was what my soul always wanted to do anyways. But I was like, so, so in the workaholic mode with this thing, but it wasn't working for me anymore, and it needed to be surrendered. And so there is like a death and a resurrection process that you go through when you're healing the fallen warrior money wound. And also, it's just like like you might be more of like the indigenous soul, you might be more of the religious soul, you might be more of the witch soul, but you'll probably have aspects of all of these in you, because if you don't have it on like a lineage level or on like a past life level, we all have it on a collective level. And so collectively, this is like basically what we're going through, multiple cycles of this in like the capitalistic cultures. And it's showing up as like the burnout in the bodies. It's showing up as like, market crashes. It's showing up as like when, natural disasters come in and wipe out a city and wipe out homes. And so that's like how this sacred masculine principle is being redirected really as a whole for our planet. But if we do it all consciously, we might not have to continue manifesting the disasters that bring about the defeat. But understanding that like in the defeat, there is a victory. Like in the defeat, you are going to find the sweetness of life again. You're going to find the beauty of life again. So again, with all of them, all of the sacred wealth healing principles are really about bringing two opposites together. That's a very tantric kind of practice, is bringing things that shouldn't go together. And when we do that, that's when we find that sort of like union of the black and the white serpent, and and we get to practice, like real kind of effortless manifesting, because we're coming into balance, like with our ultimate creative power. We're coming back into balance with like Shiva and Shakti, and we're coming back into balance with nature and God and ourselves. So business. Anastasia asks, so business is more challenging for those of us who are more yin. Typically, yes. If you have more of like if you're more in that free spirited, more like naturally the feminine, we call it like more the indigenous, connected to nature, connected to the divine feminine. Yes. Business tends to be more of an, I wouldn't say it's more of a challenge. I think business is challenging for everybody, but there tends to be more resistance towards it. There's not like usually there's not a natural attraction. There's not like a natural attraction to like, hey, I want to like build an empire. Like, just like, that's like not, it's like not usually the natural inclination for somebody that has like a very is like really identified in more of that indigenous spirit of humanity. It won't be the priority, and there can be significant resistance to it. So, in some ways, like it's like it's like this soul needs to go on the journey to just to like heal the masculine and like find and discover the lost feminine. Like this soul needs to go on the journey to discover the lost sacred masculine. If you're more oriented in the feminine direction, it's almost like those souls, they forgot, they don't remember what the sacred masculine power looks like. They've just seen this oppression for so long, and now they're identified, now the masculine energy is identified with being this like really traumatic energy. Actually, both people, the masculine energy is identified as being a really traumatic energy. And then you tend to meet your opposite in really yes. Yeah, like usually you'll draw in what you need to learn in your romantic relationships. I have seen that to be true. Yes. Yes. So, like just an example, like I've been in, I would say more like the last several years of my life have really been about diving into more of the indigenous spirit within myself. Moving to Asheville was a big part of that. And when I got here, I just started having like tremendous, I just like never wanted to work. Like all I wanted to do was just be out in nature, and and be with friends and socialize and do healing things, and I wanted to just that's like I felt my indigenous wound come up because it was like all of a sudden I didn't want to do more. I didn't like want to grow my business very big. I didn't want to be as structured in my days. It was like I wanted more of that freedom. I wanted more of that pleasure. I wanted to spend all my time in nature and all of this. And so I gave myself like 2 years here where I really just like let myself do that. And I entered really deeply into like sacred sexuality and discovering all of that. And then to answer your question about your meeting your opposite in relationship, this man that I just spent like 2 months with, like his name is like Alexander, which is like literally means the conqueror. And he's just like literally the opposite. The guy's in like total burnout, working all the time mode, like deeply disconnected from his feminine. So yeah, like these are the two. And then I went out to San Diego and like went and like lived in an urban jungle and like got really into like looking at my sacred masculine again. So you may even find it's like not even like that you'll be one or the other. You may even find that you go through cycles with these like where it's like you might need to be in your feminine discovery cycle for these couple of years, and now you might need to be, now you might have like discovered more juice, and now you might need to go back into your masculine where you empower more of the creativity and more of the inspiration that awoken from that. So I usually see myself like just not like not specifically talking about indigenous conqueror, but if I'm just really looking at yin and yang, I see myself kind of doing 3-year cycles where it's like 3 years in yin, 3 years in yang, and then like maybe a year of union, and then it's like 3 years in yin, 3 years in yang. I see that in my life. I don't know if that's going to be true for you guys, but like if I'm just like as a tantric and I'm looking at my life, I see myself doing like like I dive into one, I dive into the other, and it's kind of like I flow back and forth between them, and then I'm progressively bringing about more and more union as like my soul awakens and becomes more embodied. And I have found it to be easier for me to like deeply focus in one realm or in the other, for at least if it's like your first time where you start working with like feminine yin and yang principles. And I know like in Egypt, I know that that's how it worked. Like you would study like the path of Ka, the path of Isis, the path of Shakti for several years in a mystery school, and then you would study Ra, and you would study like the path of like the divine masculine, and then you would like have like a like you would have another year where it was union. So I don't know if maybe like my soul continues to do that because of basically past lives in like these mystery school traditions where it was like literally structured that way or not. Wish there was a crash course. I will create a crash course. One day I will create like do you mean on the Egyptian mystery schools? Okay. Maybe you're typing. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Well, this has kind of been a crash course. This is kind of a crash course. Um to go really deep with them, it takes more than just a crash course. Or I find that. I think it's like a I think it's a lifetime's long study, not just a life. It's like a lifetime's study. Yeah. So, would anybody like to speak or share or give your feedback, or you have questions, you want some coaching? Monica? Yeah.
I had a question. Like you said, you fashioned yourself a dakini, and I don't have a whole like lot of connection to Buddhism, other than the fact that I've done some meditation and I've done some research. But
Mhm.
I had this really strong connection with the deity Vajrayogini, and then like Haruka, her consort.
Mhm.
And I was just wondering if you knew about Vajrayogini at all. She's like the trauma goddess, basically.
I don't. I really don't know anything about Buddhism. It's like one of the religions I haven't studied. I use that word. Uh, I most of the mystery traditions that I have more wisdom in are the Western traditions. So
So
Christianity, yeah, Christianity. I've studied a lot of Egyptian mysticism, like and a little bit Celtic and Norse, but I don't know much about Buddhism.
So that's my prime I guess that's my primary question then is like what do you mean by tantra? Cuz it's like that's one of those words that like means a lot of things
Right.
and in Tibetan Buddhism like Vajrayogini is used specifically in tantra and I like that's the extent of what I know about tantra like other than having like peered at the you know um the sex book the
Yeah.
yeah.
What Tantra is to me is a path of spiritual development that is more inherently based in the goddess. Okay. That is probably not the definition you are going to get if you look up Tantra on most, like traditional definitions. I mean, that word Tantra comes from the East, and it is, I think it literally means to weave. And it is about, the weaving of consciousness into, into life. So people are going to give lots of different definitions for Tantra. This is mine. To me, Tantra is, whereas you had many spiritual traditions which sort of guide you away from the creation, away from the experience of the body and the experience of life, and like guide you to kind of go within and withdraw consciousness into the inner planes. Tantra is a path that celebrates the the expression of God as the creation, the expression of consciousness as the body, the expression of consciousness through the physical form. And so when I think of a tantric healing modality, with regards to, let's say if you're just applying it to a healing, like if you were to heal something, let's say you were working with somebody that was really deeply based in um like uh like deep, like I have a healer that I work with, she's profound, but her processes is based in nothingness. It's based in like this very deep stillness that you bring in somatically, like through the body. It's like meditation, right? Where it's like almost like entering deep, deep, deep into the self, deep into like withdrawing consciousness from the physical plane and doing this very deep presence practice work from within, which is what a lot, which that's necessary to have that integrated in tantric. But a more tantric way to heal something, rather than like going deep within the self and bringing presence like into maybe an aspect of consciousness that is wounded, through a somatic or just like a deep presence process, which isn't really verbal, which isn't really, you might not even know what you're doing. Like it's like you're just kind of going into transcendence on some level. A tantric might try to kind of unlock the same like knot in human consciousness. Like if you have a problem or something you're struggling with, a tantric might have you act out whatever that is. So that would be a tantric healing practice, where instead of just like meditating, going into stillness and almost like clearing it through like non-dualistic presence, like and withdrawing of consciousness from the creative realm, a tantric might have you take that and enact it, or paint a picture of it, or like go dress up like it. And in that process, like you would have like an emotional release, and you would integrate like whatever that aspect was. So the tantric path, and understanding that like to really, really effectively practice a tantric path, you would also be doing the meditation. It's not like you don't do that, but really like a tantric, like traditionally tantra in India was like a really rogue, like a really rogue spiritual practice, that like you had like the Vedics and the Brahmins, and you had like all the traditional like the caste systems, and like the Upanishads, and the things like the traditional religious teachings and everything. And like then you had the tantrics that were just kind of like wild mystics, where they were just kind of like doing whatever they needed to do to like, or whatever they felt like doing to like open consciousness, and they did like really radical things. And then a lot of tantrics worship the divine mother. They worship a goddess as like one of their primary forms of worship, even though it's not always a goddess. And there are so many different sects of tantra. Like you could study this sect of tantra and it could be totally different from this sect of tantra. So it's very hard to give like a straightforward definition. And then the Buddhist tantrics and the Indian tantrics. And then like what I always say is that most of the lost mystery traditions in the Western world were the more tantric mystery traditions. They were like the pagan cultures and the Egyptian cultures and the Celtic cultures. Many of these were much more what I would classify as tantric than like what we've inherited in just like the Abrahamic faiths that come to us like from the Middle East, that became sort of the post of like the Western civilization. And most of these other faiths that we lost honored more of the sacred feminine in them, like looking at the material plane to gain wisdom, like looking at the stars, practicing magic and manifesting and all of these things. It's much more of what I would classify as a tantric path. Sorry, I'm going to look at, okay. Does that make sense, Monica?
Yeah, it all sounds like it's in congruity with like what I've learned. It's interesting to hear like from the Indian perspective, because what I've heard is like Chinese Buddhism and Tibetan Buddhism, and like a friend of mine who's a transsexual and exploring like literally dressing up in different genders to like fulfill different goals. So it's totally
Well,
in
well,
alignment with what I've learned.
share with us what you've been learning. I would love. I don't know anything about Chinese tantra, or I mean, I learned some about Taoist. Taoism is has tantric elements to it, but
So, well, that's when you said that you're a Dakini. That's how I learned the word Dakini, and I thought it was came from like Vajrayana Buddhism, and it was like this. It basically, it's this goddess thing, and it's from what I learned, this trauma goddess Vajrayogini, who manifests as like a 16-year-old virile woman who has all this anger, and she like drinks from this skull cap, and like there's this meditation you do to her form, which is in this kind of Star of David symbol, and you do
Mhm.
these mantras to Vajrayogini, but you're supposed to be initiated like formally through a lineage, and
Mhm.
I didn't. I got turned on by like a friend of mine, and then watched some videos, and then went to a Buddhist monastery, and like meditated for a while about it.
Mhm.
I have to say she's super powerful. She's really how I connected to my trauma in my lineages when I was healing from a disease. I
Mhm.
specifically meditated on her and had visions of my grandfather who actually fought in Korea and in Hong Kong and stuff. He was a colonel in the army, and he's German Jewish and escaped Nazi Germany. And I just felt like there was this kind of like connection to Vajrayogini. They say if you can achieve enlightenment in like 7 lifetimes if you just hear her name. Um, yeah, so her path, they call it the swift path to enlightenment, but it's also kind of like the hardest, and it's the in the Kali Yuga, like the difficult times that we're going through. She
Mhm.
kind of represents like the fastest way to enlightenment, but she's also like it's like a lightning bolt of like craziness. And then her consort, the male, like Yab Yum is in Tibetan Buddhism, like masculine, feminine. Her male consort is Haruka, and he's like mega sexy.
This sounds
She's super
great.
sexy too. She's like
Sign me up.
naked with like free flowing hair. She's like super sexy 16-year-old goddess, to the point where like a lot of Tibetan Buddhists like who don't follow her path kind of like think that she represents this like decay, and in a way she does represent kind of like a fornication of sorts, but it's this like wild and kind of uninhibited. And then also she's like a goddess who steps on like the skulls of men. I mean, she's like super
That
hardcore.
just like literally sounds like my essence. I need to check her out. Yeah,
Totally. Yeah,
yeah,
she's like worth dressing up as. Like also.
yeah. I mean, like mostly when I say that word, it's almost like I just feel like I've like lived that like that's just been like a part of like how I've had to like come to terms with my own like why was I drawn to like the gates of hell at 18 years old and like dancing around like a satanic cult and like I just like to like dive into like really intense areas of human consciousness and basically like just like absorb it and it's really really hard to absorb but I like eventually like through the deep like womb of life like I'm very devoted to the divine feminine but I'm not really like a mother Mary energy so I've always been more attracted to the fiercer aspects of the feminine and the fiercer aspects of the goddess that come through in more of like the forms of like Kali and what I know are the Dakinis, which are a lot like the Valkyrie in the Nordic traditions, and like Lilith. The I'm born under the star of Hecate, so I just like more. I'm just like more naturally drawn to all that energy, and yeah, a lot of tantrics love those kinds of goddesses. I don't know why. Like there's like whole like tantric lineages in India where it's just like Kali, 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 Kali. So I think it's in my opinion, it is a I think it is like a more immediate path. And I also know that some of the work that I do, I would probably not tell some people in my life about it. And I would also not advise a lot of people to like, unless you like really know that this is your path. I'm gonna just put my video on spotlight here because the thing is like one of the things that I feel, and I'm just telling you guys all this, was this is we're off topic now. We're just gonna be talking about tantra. You know, I have an avatar, like a perfect master. Like he's not in a body, but he is my whole path from when I awoke when I was at Bones Gate with you when I was 20 years old and I had my awakening. And then I went on this journey. Like the whole first 7 years of it for me, there was this master like appearing to me, and I thought it was Jesus, because at that time I was practicing Catholicism. I didn't really know anything other than Christianity, and I had this beloved that was appearing to me, and it came in the form of, he was in different forms, but to me it was Jesus. And so I had this very, very deep love for Jesus, and I felt very strongly that he was on earth, like right now. And I like that was my little just kind of my little inner fantasy was like that I was going to meet Jesus, the new Jesus, and get married and live happily ever after. This is like what, because like what you have to understand about like the divine awakening of the heart is it feels like a romance. It feels very romantic. It felt very romantic. It's almost as if the sexual, like the whole imprint of like the sexual energy of like what sexual energy instinctually kind of creates in human consciousness, which is like this high romantic ideal. And it's one of the strongest forces of consciousness is this sexual love energy. And so all of mine got channeled into this divine beloved that was appearing to me in all of these dreams. And then for me, it was like more than just, I wasn't like, as soon as I heard about an avatars and that these beings like come again and again as like Jesus and the Buddha and Krishna and like these divine beloveds come to earth all the time. Like I was just like at that point, like the ecstasy like went through my nervous system, and I was just like, oh my God, like it's like 2012 is coming. He's got to be here. And that was just like my goal. My goal was to find this divine, like to find the avatar, to find the divine beloved, or to find this perfect master. And I went on this like 7-year search for him. So for me, when I found my master, Meher Baba, and he wasn't in a body. I don't want to, if I go into this whole story, there's so many stories I could tell you guys about Baba, which I don't normally talk about Baba in any of my programs because it's almost like it's like I want to keep one thing to myself. And it's just like, and I also just know that like I might feel this way about him, but that doesn't mean he's your beloved or he's your master. But like, I trust Baba so much, like like he was the only thing that could really heal me. Like I went to so many other healers and masters and teachers, and I got little things from all of them, and I learned a lot, but I really did not get well. And I could not get my consciousness into human form all the way. It was very disassociated until I met Baba. And it was like, even though he wasn't in a body, there was like a very profound display of like, I literally wound up in the emergency room. There's all kinds of things. So so Baba is like he's like a definite perfect master. And the way, and he is operating he overlights me. So like Baba was called the Awakener, and I'm like, my company is Waking Beauty. So he overlights me, and with many of these more dangerous sort of like spiritual paths, like a tantric path, like even in like Sufis and stuff, like Sufis, like they feel as if you need like a perfect master to kind of like guide you through if you're going to do more of these like edgier kind of ways of awakening consciousness. Because one of the things that can happen, like let's say you're like diving deep into trauma work, or you're going to go to an orgy, or you're going to do something really edgy as a way to like awaken consciousness, is like you could re-trigger lots of trauma and get really stuck in it. And I guess for me, like I feel this like really strong sense of this like protection and this guidance that's with me at all times. And I just have to always, I just like, I don't really know who else to give props to other than Baba for that. Like he came to me in a dream 2 nights ago. Like he's always like kind of telling me what to do. And so it makes me feel really safe. And I just like, I've even like thought I should probably really talk about this in relationship to Tantra, because Baba has been such a big, um, you know, I think having a really powerful master that's guiding you on the inner planes is like very, very, very important. If you're going to do more of the very edgy experimental forms of awakening, because there is a potential to get into some sticky situations with some of the like sex magic and like some of the really edgy practices that like tantrics tend to be drawn to. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Sorry for the diversion.
Yeah, that's okay. No, I mean I like talking about all of this stuff. All right. Bridge left. She says, "Thank you, Goddess, for a fab call. I loved seeing all my Sacred Wealth sisters. Have to fly." Mwah. Bye, Bridge. Does anyone else want to share or have anything they want to talk about in relationship to the Sacred Wealth portion? Or Tantra, if you want to ask about Tantra, that seems to be the subject that's alive for everybody. Okay.
I just wanted to say hi. It's Molly. I was kind of doing some other
Molly.
stuff. Yeah, so I was like, I had a really long day, and then it's snowing here, and so then I ended up actually taking a nap, and then I like woke up and I saw the email. I was like, oh, there's a call.
Yeah. Hey, when did you get on?
I guess like not that long ago, when Monica was talking about the dakinis and stuff. So pretty recently, but I just figured I would see if you guys were still on and say hi.
Hey, Molly. So good to hear from you.
Yeah, it's good to hear from you and see everyone. Yeah, this is definitely interesting stuff for sure. I feel like, especially regarding some of the Taoist practices. One thing I've been doing, which I really like, is this breath work called the microcosmic orbit, which is just super simple, but it's like, I found it to be like the best breath work. Well, I've done other ones too, but that one I really, really like a lot. So it's just
practiced that before. It's beautiful.
Yeah.
And I love Montauk Chia's work. He's wonderful to explore if you're interested in more of the Taoist perspective on sacred sexuality.
Yeah, I've like one of my teachers recently is like, you should be like reading Montauk Chia, and like I'm like, yeah, I'm getting to it. But
what do you find happens for you when you practice the microcosmic orbit? How is it helping you, or how is it transforming consciousness for you?
Well, I think for me, it's about like it allows me to move through my body in a really beautiful way, like, and being really aware of, because the whole practice is basically you breathe from your perineum up your back around the top of your head to your third eye, and then you exhale down your front body and then circle it again. So sort of like this motion of like a cycle, like almost like a wheel around me, and kind of gets me into my body. So that was kind of the most profound thing that I found out about it. when doing it. And I've also led other people on this breath, because it's like, it's pretty accessible. Like, it's not like a practice that takes a lot to, like, I mean, of course, to like do it all, with all of the intricacies, it definitely takes a long time to perfect, but like someone could basically understand the practice. And just the idea of moving your breath and breathing into different places in the body. Like, I've definitely done that in yoga, but this particular breath, I feel like, has like really got me on that, I would say.
Beautiful, beautiful. Yeah. I think that I mean, one of the most important practices for me has been like going into the body. And the breath can be a very powerful way of opening up the body and bringing us into our body. I know that Brooks, who's one of my teachers, like his main, like the whole of the Art of God, the whole program was a 3-year program, was just deeply bringing consciousness into the body. So in some ways that was very, very tantric, right? Because most of us have levels of ourself that aren't integrated in the body. And taking like an hour a day to just, or less than an hour, 20 minutes, whatever you can do to just like go within and draw consciousness into the body is very, very important, and would be, I would say, like a foundational sort of tantric practice. But then again, like everything could be considered on some level a tantric practice, because life is life.
Yeah, I think China had a comment.
Is that China's
comment? Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so China says you're feeling fearful, China. I don't know if you want to open up the line or share more about it with us. I think I see you there. I think maybe you're trying to open the line.
Hi, I'm trying to lay down and listen. No, I don't know. It's just a lot of fear has been coming up regarding like my spirituality and my sexuality, and just everything. I feel kind of overwhelmed today, or maybe like the last like couple days. I know I do have the Wounded Warrior from our reading, and that was really big. And I not to be super personal, but I tried to be like self-pleasuring last night, and then I had like an immediate like just disconnect from myself, and I just feel really like, I don't know, I'm just in a really weird space. So the tantra part of like being in my feminine flow, and I really feel this is really important for me to move in right now, in general. But I don't know, I just feel very disconnected.
What is
I guess that's the best.
Is the fear?
Sorry, I'm all over the place.
No. Let's work with it. Is the fear specific, or is it just a generalized fear? And could you maybe close your eyes and feel into it and tell us more about it? Like, just feel into it in this moment. Where is it in your body? What is it related to?
It feels like just generalized, but it feels like it's like from my heart. And I've been getting, like, I went on vacation by myself, which was fine. But I went and got a massage, and the lady was just like, your heart, something like my soul is trying to come through, and I'm so like closed down, like I'm so shut down that I'm not letting anything flow. And this was like told to me like a couple times recently. Like, I'm just so, I don't know, this feels like this overwhelming fear. Well, I don't want to say over, but this feels like this pervasive fear. Like, I don't know if it's fear of the unknown, or fear I'm gonna mess it up, or just fear.
So could you close your eyes and be with that fear in your heart?
Yeah.
And if it helps for you to breathe into that, into your heart space, you can breathe into it.
I saw a deer.
Okay, you see a deer.
Yeah.
What does the deer represent for you?
I don't know, like innocence. I thought of Bambi.
Not a Bambi. Okay, so you
Yeah.
innocent. Okay, so ask the deer, or ask the deer why. What is its message for you?
It like led me to like destruction.
Okay,
I'm being scared of like a destructive force.
okay, so you're afraid that a destructive force is going to hurt the deer.
It's like the deer like led me. Maybe I feel
Oh,
like I'm scared that I'm being innocent in my path, but it's gonna lead me to like a destructive place. Does that make sense?
okay, so you are the deer, or you
Yeah.
feel the deer aspect of you is being led into a place of destruction.
Yes, yes.
Okay, can you feel or see the destruction?
Yeah, it's like a apocalyptic, like everything's burning. You know, say like the deer is like all in this nice little forest, and then I just saw it like walk like walk across, and then beneath it like
Okay, so one of the things that if we're working with the Dakini energy, because that got brought in by Monica, one of the things that the Dakini energies and like the Kali energy certainly brings in is she can have that destructive side. So and they can teach us how to be in that intensity without collapsing, I guess you might say, collapsing consciousness. So, what I would love for you to do is just to allow yourself to become one with that which you fear, which is that burning inferno. So you can see that as an image, and if you can guide your consciousness into that burning inferno. And at the same time, what I would love for you to do is keep your awareness also as you enter into the burning inferno, the apocalyptic burning inferno. I want you to also keep your awareness and your presence with the deer at the same time.
like a path opened up.
Okay, a path opened up.
Yeah.
What does the path look like?
It's clear, so like the deer can walk through.
Oh, so the deer can walk through the burning inferno?
Yeah.
Interesting. Do you want the deer to walk through the burning inferno?
Yeah. Yeah. I guess I'm gonna be honest. Yeah.
Yeah,
Kinda.
you do? Okay, interesting. Okay,
Yeah.
so why don't you you as the deer and you as the burning inferno, why don't you let the deer walk into the burning inferno?
Yeah.
Do you notice has anything, just feel your body also. If it has your body, is your body feeling anything? Do you feel anything different? Did we lose you? We might have lost connection with China here. I'm gonna wait a second to see if she gets back on. China? I think the inferno consumed the deer. It'll be interesting to hear from her when she gets back on. I hope you get back on, China. When you do, let us know. Okay. Anybody else? Does anybody else want to share while we're waiting for China to come back? Actually, let me address that. I think maybe, did China get back on? No. I think one of the things that, and it seems like this has just been brought forward with the Dakini energy and the talk of trauma healing work and the Inferno, and possibly even me talking about how Tantra can be a dangerous path. One of the really beautiful things that I have found from doing this work, and I think, and I guess we're going to be putting this within the context of like the tantric tradition, which, while I haven't worked with any of the Dakinis, okay, I think China's back on. China, how are you? What happened?
I love Mercury retrograde. I'm good. I felt transformed by the fire. Those two things, like the deer allowed me to walk. I mean, the path opened and let me to walk through. So it's kind of like twofold. Like I feel like I saw the path unfold on one end, where the deer like was walking through the path and it was like clear. But then I saw another image of like the fire transforming the deer into like a goddess.
A goddess or a garden?
Yeah.
Which one?
A goddess.
A
goddess. Yeah.
Well, I know that you have been sharing that you are desiring to make a career change, and that's one of the reasons why you joined the academy. I also know that
yes.
you've been actively working on embodying more, healing the fallen warrior wound and embodying more of this sacred feminine energy, and specifically embodying it in and through the path of sexuality. And so this is why I created a course like the Magdalene Wounds, because what I have discovered is that many of us are really, really deeply afraid of the feminine energy, and we are like very programmed from our specific religious and cultural traditions to basically perceive the path of the goddess as evil or wrong, or to perceive I'm just going to put my video on, to perceive, the body as being evil or wrong, to perceive sexual energy as being evil or wrong. And now one of the things I'm noticing came up for me is like when I started talking about how Tantra can be dangerous, like that even might be a Magdalene wound in me. That might be something I need to clear. Literally. So I still have stuff that needs to clear. Like there's still parts of me that have fear of my own inner feminine. There's still parts of me that have fear of my sexual power. There's still parts of me that demonized aspects of magic or demonized aspects of sexuality or demonized aspects of myself or my consciousness on some level. And this is fundamental to the this was fundamental if you're looking at these wounds we talked about today, and the basically the conquering of indigenous people and the creation of quote unquote civilized society. This was like part of like the whole like kind of force of like this Western civilization, which was like, we need to become civilized and we need to become, Christians, and like all of this stuff with nature and the body and these pagan ceremonies, and they looked at them, they're like, oh my God, like this is so, these are savages, and they have fires and drums, and they make sacrifices of animals, and it's like it's so like wrong, 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 wrong. And a lot of this has been like deeply programmed into us. Meanwhile, look at like what is happening. Like, have you guys ever driven through a slaughterhouse in Texas? You want to talk about like truly harrowing animal sacrifice? Like,
It smells terrible.
oh my God,
It's smell death for like miles.
traumatizing things I've ever seen. So here's the thing. A lot of us, myself included, because I think one of the things Monica like helped bring up with the Dakini stuff and triggered my like, you need a master for to be safe on this path type of thing. It's like even parts of me are still like scared of the goddess path, or still scared of the feminine, or still scared of the integration of power. And this is why I also say the Magdalene wounds aren't just unique to this planet and the indoctrination, the domination of like the masculine principle over the feminine principle in this last age of time that we call alternatively patriarchy or industrialization or whatever we want to call it, Kali Yuga age, whatever. This is actually consciousness, the consciousness of God itself, trying to come to terms with nature. I mean, you have to understand that like before there was humans and all this and that, like look at nature, look at like what happens in nature. There are forest fires in nature, or lightning strikes, or animals that eat each other. And there is this quest for survival, and all of these instincts and impressions that we inherit in the actual nature of who we are through this body. And so there's a reason why we're scared of the body consciousness. There's a reason why we're scared of the lower chakras, or there's a reason why we're scared of the sex instinct, is because there is a level of trauma that's even experienced in the animal form, or even experienced in the plant form. And like nature itself, like this is why these people, like I'm not a Buddhist, I'm not a tantric Buddhist, but this is why I know why those mystics created a little deity as like a like little like sexy like dark feminine 16-year-old girl like type of deity, because what they're trying to do is they're trying to come to terms with that aspect of consciousness. And it's beyond religion, it's beyond human, it is literally related to like nature, the nature of consciousness itself. And this is why the Magdalene wounds are metaphysical, because we shame the nature of the body, that we call this world the great whore of illusion, right? It's an aspect of the divine feminine. We demonize ourselves, and we demonize the unconscious that's inherent in the creation, because we don't understand it, and it's scary to us as like a little ant, or like as a little deer, or then when we get into our human form and we're still have levels of us that are operating from that identification as being a form in this like massive like harrowing universe, trying to like bring about survival of ourselves. And so we demonize it, and then we become so afraid of it that then we just like want to cast it out. We just like, I just don't want to look at it. I just want to pretend like it's like there, and then I want to pretend like I'm civilized. I'm just gonna be civilized. And then because we're not taking responsibility for all of nature, for all of the nature of what we are, and then we become quote unquote civilized, and it's like we're not going to do an animal sacrifice anymore, but hey, we're going to create like a veritable holocaust of cows in Texas that is like, I mean, like, it literally like shook my soul to drive by that. Like, it was like a miles long, like these cows were like in it was like horrible. And then you think like our ancestors had sacrifices like that for a reason, because they knew about the laws of life and death, and they didn't sugarcoat things. They took children when they were 12 or 13 years old, and to initiate them into becoming a man or woman, they put them out in nature for 7 days and be like, face it. Or they talk to them about what a blood sacrifice was. And these things, it's like, it was a way to take that aspect of what is inherent to all of us. And that's why we're here talking about money, because there's an aspect of us that is in survival consciousness. There's an aspect of us that does have desires. There's an aspect of us that does need to defend our territory against other humans. But they took those parts of them and they contained them in sacred rituals and in sacred teachings. And these are all the different lost wisdom traditions of however many cultures, whether it's Tibetan Buddhism or Indian or Egyptian or this or that. It was a way to help us alchemize basically these aspects of our experience so that we're not enslaved by them. And this is the thing. When you take any of these dark feminine, demonic, dark, whatever we think they are, and you start to release the fearful identity that we often hold around them, what I have always found is that it's just like, I did this with Lilith Upgrade, right? If you guys take Lilith Upgrade, that's like all we do is like, we're taking this demonized aspect in the Judeo-Christian tradition. Lilith is mother of demons, all of these things. But when you really sit with her and you really actually just like strip away the fear and the demonization and the shame and the disassociation, you just sit with what it is. What you find is it's actually just a force of nature. That's it. It's like the volcano, or it's like the fire, the forest fire. It's like this or that. There's all these forces in nature. And when we can release our fear and our identification and all this like ways that we are civilizing ourselves from it, not only yes, China, do you awaken more pleasure usually in your body, you become more one with this whole entire universe. And you really do realize, and I swear the more that I do this work, the more that I really do realize, like, it's love. It's all love. Like, it really is. And like, yeah, it like being an adept, being a spiritual adept, being a magician, being a sorceress, being a tantrika, being any of these things, like whatever like word we want to come to it, it takes a tremendous amount of courage. This is why most people don't do it. It takes tremendous levels of courage. Like, that's why Jesus will come and be like, you have to die to experience the kingdom of God or eternal life. Like, but it's not like an actual death. Maybe we'll all go through an actual death at some kind. It's a death of like one level of consciousness, which is more that like fearful kind of like self-preserving, where the instincts have literally collapsed consciousness into feeling like we're like this fragmentary thing, like a victim or like needs to survive, into like awakening into that higher realm and being one with everything. And that's when we find what we call power, right? That's when we find real power. And what I have found, and I just found this over and over and over and over and over again in my life, is like the things that collapse me back from not being one with God and from feeling in that place of like fear and desire and like going into like the reptile nervous system, so to speak, is like these lower chakra things like money, sex, power, like all these lower chakra things are the things that take me out. So I just started to say, well, rather than try to hang out in the bliss state at all times, I'm going to go in and just face everything that like takes me out of it until I am like no longer basically fragmenting, because of there's a lot of I found that there's a lot of trauma down there, and you've just got to like tenderly lift it up into your higher consciousness one piece by one piece. So if that for me is called, like, I like the word tantra is like, when I studied different languages, that seemed like what matched what I was naturally doing. But we don't even need a word for it. It's just, that's what I'm saying. It's just like, how do you define tantra? It's just like, I don't really know. It's just like being human. Like, that's tantra, right? But like being really deeply consciously human, being a conscious animal, like being a divine animal. Like, that's what Hugh man means. Hugh is divine, man is animal, man is in that word. So it's like being a divine animal, and that's what we're here to learn. So, okay, I just had like an explosion there, China. I don't know. Where are you at? Where are you at with that? And your relation to like entering the inferno?
I definitely feel not as scared or fearful. I can say that. My crown chakra is really tingling, so I'm sure I'll integrate more tonight. But I definitely felt, okay, you're safe. It was kind of like, okay, the path open, you're safe. And I think that was like the scarier part, like not wanting to make a mistake and not wanting to do this and not wanting to go too far and not wanting to, be led astray and all those like feelings, and then not wanting to overly sexualize myself or exploit myself, but being very naturally sexual. It's just, it was like trying to toggle all these different emotions. And even because I'm taking the Magdalene wound. So, we went to the last wound, and it's just like I had a still mate. You know what I mean? I'm just kind of like, I don't know where else. And I had started like this pleasuring, and then all of a sudden it's just like everything kind of went left. I'm like, I don't want to touch myself, and I don't want to, it was just really, it's like I just retreated all of my energy. So I don't know. I do definitely feel. No, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Thank you, because I was in a little place like that too today, where I was feeling afraid, and I've been really struggling. I'll be really honest. Like, I've been really struggling with this and I think I'm going to just speak to something, which is, I think that like most everybody who's on this call is like on some level like a rebel goddess tantrika, like sacred sexual priestess. I don't know what you want to call it, but I think like all of us are here because on some level, like, we're doing this really deep work. And as embodiments of the feminine power too, like, this is like what many, many, many of us are here to do at this time, because it's really way more of like the divine feminine that can do this work with like these lower realms and these levels of nature that are very kind of like base levels of consciousness, right? Because they are like the base of the feminine, the divine feminine power, or nature, the power of nature. So I think like many of us have been drawn here because we're all doing this work on some level, whether it's in ourselves or with clients, or we're being called to it by like a much bigger force. It's a force of awakening that wants to come into this planet. And all of us are doing this work first on ourselves, and then sending it through these businesses we're creating in all the different forms. And everybody's doing a different form of it, whether it's, doing sexual healing work, or whether it's doing addiction healing work, or whether it's writing amazing stories of awakening for the collective. Like we're all bringing that forward. And like it's like that's something that we have to face within ourselves, is like the fear of being identified with that when we're living in a dominant culture that is afraid of that, and hence could be afraid of us, or like
Yeah.
family members could be afraid of us, or other people will think things about us, et cetera, et cetera. So that's like one level of what I was hearing in your share, China. And then just like the other level, which is like, because nobody's gone here for so many years, and that was sort of the fear that came out of me, like danger, danger, get a spiritual master. Like I can't guide you guys through this forest. I probably like
Yeah.
awakened that fear in you, China. But like,
Mhm.
because like no, like our religion and our culture, nobody's done it, we're like pioneers. Like we're literally pioneering it, all of us here. Like we're pioneering it for our culture, and we're the first ones to go in, and we're going into the unknown, and that's like always going to bring fear, right? Like it's just like a natural instinct. And that's why I think it's like really important for us to like come together and like workshop this stuff and support each other in it. Because like I can tell you from my experience of like progressively coming into this over the last 7 years, there's nothing to fear. It's like it's only gotten better and like more free and like more beautiful. And I really genuinely feel that like it is like it is like one of the most sacred forms of service that we can do for the planet. And whether we do it by alchemizing the unconscious in our relationship with money, which is what I'm teaching, or whether you're doing it by alchemizing the unconscious in your relationship to sexuality, or alchemizing the unconscious in relationship to addictions, or alchemizing the unconsciousness in relationship to love and relationships, like all of us are holding different pieces of it. But it's like you know, those of us that I think are drawn here are probably like a little bit more edgy, and like we're doing very, very important work. And my experience with it is like it is really safe, and it's like actually like way safer to like leap off the edge and dive into the unconscious and liberate yourself from this than it kind of is to hold on to the fragmented, civilized, like clinging to the world power system that already is in place. Like, because that thing is like definitely a sinking ship. Like that thing is definitely like not very secure. Like I'm sorry. And like we're gonna just be seeing it more and more and more with stock market crashes and natural disasters. And I mean, it's already like collectively like the faith that people are placing in each other within like governments and businesses and education is at an all-time low. Like everybody can feel it. And so what I just encourage you to do is like call out to the divine mother, the divine Sophia, whatever word for the divine feminine like really, really resonates with you, because we need to learn how to rely on nature again as a sacred, loving mother principle that can nurture us and that can sustain us. And if we don't, if we're afraid of her, and we're afraid of like all of these aspects of our own nature, we're not, you know, we're going to remain in the state of disassociation that humanity is in, when really over and over and over and over and over again, what the goddess has shown me is like her nature is deeply, deeply loving and compassionate. And it's just that like we have lost like all of the sacred teachings and all of the sacred guidance around how to understand her laws and her practices and the cycles of life and death. and what sexual energy is and how to use it sacredly and all and on and on and on and on and on. And so but ultimately I find that the nature of reality is love, and is like the most beautiful form of love. And that like even these instincts like raw sexual energy or a volcano erupting or big orgasm or like a flush of desire or fear, all of these things are actually manifestations of love. Like they really, really are. And I think that if you want to ask me like what Tantra is, I think like Tantra is really about really realizing that the nature of the creation is love, and realizing it specifically in all of these areas that seem really, really frightening, and in all of these traumas that seem just like ungodly to us. And yet like there's just like we've gone through the sacred wealth principles here today, it's like in each, that's why I went into each of these like horrible abuses that happened on the planet to be like, what is the sacred healing principle that humanity is really trying to learn in that manifestation of that trauma? And those are the sacred wealth principles. So I'm looking at the time. I'm gonna have to close the call, and we've only 3 of us left. So I love you guys. China, thank you so much for sharing. I think like you really brought us
Thank you.
to a point of transformation here today. And
Thank you.
yeah, thank you. So I'm just gonna close us all out with a little prayer, okay? So we want to thank all of the archangels and the Divine Mother and all of the beautiful divine spirit guides who are with us today. We release the healing space of this call, and I ask to imbue everyone who listens to this call with deep, deep courage to dive in to this calling and dive into the lower nature, dive into the lower realms of money and sexuality and power and survival, and the lower chakras and the instinctual self and the animalistic self of the natural world. And we pray and we call in and we ask that you give us the true revelation and the true healing and the true knowledge of what we are as the divine and what we are as love inside these matrices, inside these aspects of the mother and of the great unconscious, which is the created realms. And I ask that you bless us, that you guide us, lead us, guide us, direct us, protect us. I ask that you ensure everybody who is applying any of the sacred wealth work or even any of the tantric work, that they are guided only to their highest good, and that they are guided to realize their power in a state of love and union with the divine, and that we all manifest this fully in our lives. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Amen.
Amen.
All right, loves. Thank you for being here. Mwah.
Thank you.
Close this out.
Good night.
Bye. Bye, Monica, Anastasia,
Good
China.
night, everyone.
Bye, everybody else who's watching on replay. Mwah. Bye.
Good night.